Okay. Hi, this is Pastor Josh from First Baptist of Queen. Thank you for checking out our daily reading through the Bible. Today is day 31 of our reading through the Bible every day. We're going to start in Exodus chapter 12, verse 14. This day shall be for you a memorial day, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. As a statute forever you shall keep it as a feast. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove leaven out of your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened from the first day until the seventh day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. On the first day you shall hold a holy assembly, and on the seventh day a holy assembly. No work shall be done on those days, but what everyone needs to eat, that alone may be prepared for you. So all of these seeming rules and regulations are simply to serve as a reminder of what God has done for them and how God has delivered them and protected them. Verse 17, and you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on the very day I brought your hosts out of the land of Egypt. Therefore, you shall observe this day throughout your generations as a statute forever. So you're always supposed to remember what the Lord has done for you. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. If anyone eats what is leavened, that person will be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he is a sojourner or a native of the land. You shall eat nothing leavened in your dwelling places. You shall eat unleavened bread. As a symbol of how quickly they had to leave Egypt. They didn't have time to put yeast in the bread and allow it to rise. They had to do it quickly. And so he's saying, if there's anyone as well in your group who refuses to remember what the Lord has done, you're supposed to separate them because they do not acknowledge God's greatness and goodness. Verse 21. Then Moses called all the elders of Israel and said to them, go and select lambs for yourselves according to your clans, and kill the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and touch the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. None of you shall go out of the door of his house until the morning, for the Lord will pass through to strike the Egyptians. And when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, the Lord will pass over the door and will allow the destroyer to enter, and will not allow the destroyer to enter your houses to strike you. You shall observe this rite as a statute for you and your sons, and for your sons forever. And when you come to the land that the Lord will give you, as he has promised, you shall keep this service. And when your children say to you, what do you mean by this service? You shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, for he passed over the houses of the people of Israel in Egypt, when he struck the Egyptians, but spared our houses. And the people bowed their heads and worshipped. This was to be a reminder to the people that death was required for their deliverance, for their salvation, as a symbol ultimately of Jesus coming and dying so that we could have salvation and deliverance. Verse 28. Then the people of Israel went and did so as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. At midnight the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians. And there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where someone was not dead. Then he summoned Moses and Aaron by night and said, up, go out from among my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go serve the Lord as you have said. Take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also. So Pharaoh, as God had said before any of this started to Moses, this is what it would take for Pharaoh to allow the Israelites to leave. And it gets to that point. And so Pharaoh, it tells Moses and Aaron, you get your people, get all your stuff, get all your animals, and get out. But bless me as you go. Don't allow any more of these plagues to befall me and the people here in Egypt. Verse 33. The Egyptians were urgent with the people to send them out of the land in haste, for they said, we shall all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened. So here's the unleavened bread. Their kneading bowls being bound up in their cloaks on their shoulders. The people of Israel had also done as Moses told them, for they had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. So the Egyptians gave them gold and silver, but it was also the Egyptians who told the Israelites to leave. They wanted them to leave. They didn't pause to say, but give me my stuff back first. The Egyptians were so fearful for their lives, they said, just leave. I don't care what you have. Just get out of here. Verse 37. And the people of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. A mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds. So it wasn't just Israelites who were leaving. There were a lot of people going with them, because obviously they feel like the Lord has blessed them. The Lord dropped all these plagues on Egypt, but didn't touch the Israelites with the plagues. And so they said, I don't want to be touched by more plagues. I'm going to go with the people who aren't plagued. Verse 39. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. The time that the people of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, on that very day, all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It was a night of watching by the Lord to bring them out of the land of Egypt. So this same night is a night of watching kept to the Lord by all the people of Israel throughout their generations. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the statute of the Passover. No foreigner shall eat of it. Nobody who is not a believer. Nobody who is not a follower. But every slave that is bought for money may eat of it after you have circumcised him. A sign of the covenant. They're a follower of the covenant. They can partake of the covenant meal. No foreigner or hired worker may eat of it. It shall be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of the flesh outside the house, and you shall not break any of its bones. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. If a stranger shall sojourn with you and would keep the Passover of the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. So they can still partake of the meal. They just have to convert to be a follower of the Lord, a believer. Then he may come near and keep it, and he shall be as a native of the land. But no uncircumcised person shall eat of it. There shall be one law for the native and for the stranger who sojourns among you. All the people of Israel did just as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day, the Lord brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their hosts. Chapter 13. Then the Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me all the firstborn. Whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both man and beast, is mine. So just as all the firstborn in Egypt died, now God is telling Moses, all the firstborn are mine. Then Moses said to the people, remember this day in which you come out from Egypt, out of the house of slavery. For by a strong hand the Lord brought you out from this place. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Today, in the month of Abib, you are going out. And when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which you swore to your fathers to give you, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall keep this service in this month. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there shall be a feast to the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen with you, and no leaven shall be seen with you in your territory. You shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. And it shall be to you a sign, as a sign on your hand, and as a memorial between your eyes, that the law of the Lord may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand the Lord has brought you out of Egypt. You shall therefore keep this statute at its appointed time from year to year. So the Lord had told Moses, this is what's going to happen. And now Moses is relaying to the people, we are going to have a feast of remembrance, a week-long time of remembrance of God's provision and deliverance every single year. Verse 11, when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and shall give it to you, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb. All the firstborn of your animals that are males shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of the donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. Every firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem. And when in time to come to your son, your son asks you, what does this mean? You shall say to him, by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of slavery. For when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of animals. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that first open the womb, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. It shall be as a mark on your hand or frontlets between your eyes, for by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. He's saying it shall be so constantly before your mind as though it were on your hand or as though it were in front of your eyes. Not that it literally has to be, saying as though it were that way. It should always be in front of you that God has delivered you and protected you. So when you have a firstborn, he says, redeem that firstborn and offer a sacrifice in the name of God as a remembrance of how He provided for you and how He took care of you and generously gave you salvation for those who follow after Him. Now let's go over to the New Testament, Matthew chapter 20, verse 29. And as they, Jesus and the disciples, went out of Jericho, a great crowd followed them. And behold, there were two blind men sitting by the roadside. And when they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David. That is a messianic title for the Messiah, the Son of God. They're calling Him the Son of God, asking for help here by the side of the road. The crowd rebuked them, telling them to be silent, but they cried out all the more, Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David. And stopping, Jesus called them and said, what do you want me to do for you? And they said to Him, Lord, let our eyes be opened. And Jesus, in pity, touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed Him. So they were asking for help to see, not for their own benefit, but so that they could better follow Jesus. Because immediately having received their sight, they got up and followed after Him. Chapter 21. Now when they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage, to the Mount of Olives, that's a city near the top of the Mount of Olives, just outside of Jerusalem, a mile-ish away from the city. Then Jesus sent two disciples, saying to them, go into the village in front of you, Bethphage, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, you shall say, the Lord needs them, and He will send them at once. This took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet, saying, say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden. A donkey was a royal animal. And in ancient times, no one rode the king's animals except the king himself. Verse 6, the disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put on them their cloaks, and He sat on them. Most of the crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went before Him and that followed Him were shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David. Again, there's that messianic title, Son of David, descendant of David, who would be the king. Blessed is He who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. Shouts of praise and of recognition of His kingship, which will become greatly ironic as these same people call for His crucifixion a few days later. Verse 10, and when He entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, saying, who is this? And the crowd said, this is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth of Galilee. And Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple. And He overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. He said to them, it is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers. And the blind and the lame came to Him in the temple, and He healed them. But when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that He did, and the children crying out in the temple, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were indignant. There's great jealousy in them, as well as what they don't want to recognize Jesus as the Son of God, the Messiah. Verse 16, and saying to Him, do you hear what they are saying? And Jesus said to them, yes. Have you never read, out of the mouth of infants and nursing babies, you have prepared praise. And leaving them, He went out of the city to Bethany and lodged there. In the morning, as he was returning to the city, he became hungry. And seeing a fig tree by the wayside, he went to it and found nothing on it but only leaves. And he said to it, "May no fruit ever come from you again." And the fig tree withered at once. When the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, "How did the fig tree wither at once?" And Jesus answered them, "Truly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' it will happen. Ask, and whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith." You see, the fig tree could not provide for Jesus what Jesus needed the fig tree to provide. So it withered. But Jesus was also demonstrating to the disciples, if you pray in great faith, God will provide great power through that faith. His power, not ours, His. But faith is present. If the faith and prayer is in His will, it will accomplish what He sets out for it to accomplish. Let's go over to Psalm 25. "Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted." This is asking God for help in loneliness. "The troubles of my heart are enlarged. Bring me out of my distresses. Consider my affliction and my troubles, and forgive all my sins. Consider how many are my foes, and with what violent hatred they hate me. Oh, guard my soul and deliver me. Let me not be put to shame, for I take refuge in you. May integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait for you. Redeem Israel, O God, out of all his troubles." So there's great opposition, great trouble, but we know that help can only come from the Lord. Mercy and grace and deliverance can only come from the Lord. Let's go over to Proverbs chapter 6. "A worthless person, a wicked man, goes about with crooked speech, winks with his eyes, signals with his feet, points with his finger, with perverted heart devises evil, continually sowing discord. Therefore calamity will come upon him suddenly. In a moment he will be broken beyond healing." So a person with wicked motivations and deception that is coating his heart will find himself in opposition to the Lord, which will result in destruction itself. So always pursue the Lord. Always seek Him for salvation and deliverance and help. And He will come through every single time in His manner, in His way, in His timing. Thank you for joining us on day 31 of reading through the Bible every day. Join us again tomorrow as we pick up on February the 1st and see where God's going to take us in His